Okay, so picture this. You're laser focused, right in the zone, coding away on a project, and then wham, out of nowhere, Git throws you a curveball.
Ugh, yeah.
It just lives to mess with us sometimes, Even for those of us who've been coding for years, there are those moments where Git feels like an impossible puzzle.
I think we've all been there. It's almost like a rite of passage for developers.
Totally. But what if I told you there's a whole other side of version control, like a whole universe beyond Git?
Oh, there is, definitely.
That's what we're diving into today. Get ready for it. We're checking out this really interesting article from the Dojo MX blog called Alternativas a Git, which basically means alternatives to Git. And let me tell you, it gets pretty wild. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit I didn't even realize how much was out there.
It's easy to get stuck in our ways, right? Especially when a tool like Git is so widely used.
For sure. But I think that's why this article is so cool. It starts by taking us back to the basics. Like, did you know Git was actually created by Linus Torvalds, the same guy behind Linux?
Yeah, I think most developers know that, right?
Probably, but it's easy to forget. And the article points out he created Git for a really specific reason to manage the Linux kernel development.
Right, which is a massive project
Right?
and super complex.
Exactly. And Linus, well, he's a genius, obviously.
Oh, for sure.
But let's just say user-friendliness wasn't exactly his top priority back then.
I think it's safe to say he had other things on his mind.
Haha, totally. Which probably explains why we all have those moments where Git makes us want to pull our hair out.
You're not wrong.
Although, fun fact, did you know that Git, like the name itself, is actually a British insult?
No way, really.
Yeah, it means unpleasant person. Apparently, Linus has a history of naming projects after himself.
That's classic.
Right. But seriously, I think the article makes a good point here. Understanding this backstory matters. It's not just some random trivia.
It definitely adds some context.
Yeah.
Helps us see the bigger picture.
Yeah, because knowing where Git came from and why it was created can help us understand why it might not always be the perfect fit.
Totally. It opens up the door to exploring other options.
Exactly. So let's dive into the first alternative the article mentions. Fossil. This one's really interesting because it wasn't created just to reinvent the wheel. It was born out of pure necessity.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So the guy behind Fossil is Richard Hipp, the creator of SQLite.
Wow, okay. He's clearly brilliant.
Right. And basically, he wasn't happy with any of the version control systems that existed at the time, so he created his own.
I can respect that. When a tool doesn't exist, build it.
Exactly. And what he created with Fossil was actually pretty revolutionary. He realized that version control isn't just about, tracking code. It's part of a much bigger picture.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this.
So he designed Fossil with this really cool integrated approach.
Integrated, you mean?
Imagine having your version control, your bug tracking, your wiki, even forums and chat all in one place.
Wait, hold on. All in one system? That's wild.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing. No more switching between a million different tools. It's like having your entire development workflow streamlined in one central hub.
Wow, that would be a game changer for a lot of teams, I can only imagine.
Right. And speaking of streamlining workflows, you've got to hear about this Autosync feature Fossil has. If you've ever gotten stuck dealing with Git's branching and merging, this will be a breath of fresh air.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Tell me more.
So with Autosync, imagine not having to manually push and pull your changes every single time you make an update.
Okay, that sounds pretty amazing, like it just happens in the background.
Exactly. Fossil just takes care of it for you, constantly synchronizing everything, which makes collaborating so much easier.
I bet, and probably cuts down on those merge conflicts too.
Big time. It's crazy how much we can learn from checking out these alternatives, and we're just getting started. Remember Pijul, the one that claims to be the most user-friendly?
Yeah, we can't forget about that one. You mentioned math.
Get ready for it. It's built on something called patch theory. But don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds.
I'll take your word for it.
It's really all about how changes are tracked and applied. So Git and a lot of other version control systems, they rely on snapshots, right? Think about it like saving different versions of a file.
Sure, that makes sense.
Like when you're working on a big document and you keep hitting save as with a different file name, just in case you need to go back.
Yep, been there.
So with patch-based systems like Pijul, imagine instead of saving the whole document every time, you're just keeping track of the changes you made.
Interesting. So you're just focusing on the edits themselves.
Exactly. So much more efficient.
Yeah, I can see that would be way more efficient.
And that's where Pijul really shines. It combines the best of both worlds, the speed of snapshots and the simplicity of patches.
That's really interesting, like trying to have your cake and eat it too. But I'm a very visual person. Can you give me a real-world example to help me wrap my head around this?
Okay, so imagine you're working on a project with a team, and instead of sending the entire project file back and forth every time someone makes a change, you only send the actual edits. Like, here's that paragraph I added, or I changed the sentence here.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You're not getting bogged down with the whole document every time. You're just focusing on the updates.
Exactly. And I bet you can already imagine how much smoother that would make merging changes too, right?
Absolutely. So Pijul is tracking these changes at a much more granular level.
Exactly. And that means it can often merge those changes way more intelligently, so there are fewer conflicts and collaboration just flows better.
That's incredible. I'm already starting to see how these alternatives could really benefit developers.
It's like Pijul just took all those little frustrations and was like, nope, we're going to fix this.
Right. It's like it's addressing the pain points head on.
Totally. And I think that's the beauty of exploring these alternatives, even if you're not planning to ditch Git tomorrow, It makes you think about things differently.
It really does. Even if Pijul doesn't become, the next Git, it's still pushing the boundaries, challenging the status quo.
Exactly. Like, it's making us ask, what if? What if there's a better way to do this whole version control thing?
Right. And, for a lot of developers, Git is all they've ever known.
Which is why I think this whole conversation is so important. It's about opening up our minds to new possibilities.
Totally. And who knows, maybe exploring these alternatives will spark some ideas for how we can improve our existing workflows, even if we stick with Git.
I love that. It's like, just because Git is the most popular kid in school doesn't mean it's the only one worth talking to, right?
Exactly. There's a whole world out there.
Okay, so for everyone listening, what would you say is the big takeaway here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that you have options. The world of version control is so much bigger than just Git. There's Fossil, Pijul, and I bet there are even more that we haven't even talked about.
So many options. It's like, remember how our parents used to tell us there's more than one fish in the sea?
Yes.
Ugh.
And the point is, the best tool for the job is the one that actually works best for you and your team. It might not be the same as everyone else.
Okay, that's such a good point. It's like with food, right? Just because everyone else loves pizza doesn't mean you have to eat it every day.
Exactly. You might be more of a sushi person. Or maybe you're like me and you love trying new things.
Exactly. And in the same way that being open to new foods can make you a more adventurous eater, I think being open to new version control systems can make you a more well-rounded developer.
100%. It's all about expanding our horizons.
Totally. So just to be clear, we're not saying everyone needs to abandon Git and switch to Fossil or Pijul tomorrow.
Right. It's about having the information, the knowledge.
Exactly. It's about knowing your options and being able to choose the right tool for the job, even if it means stepping outside your comfort zone a bit.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll discover something that totally transforms the way you work.
It's like they say, the only constant is change, right? Especially in software development.
Oh, absolutely. This field is constantly evolving. What's cutting edge today could be outdated tomorrow.
So we've gone deep into the world of version control beyond Git today.
Yeah, we really dug into some fascinating alternatives.
From like the quirky origins of Git to Fossil with its all-in-one approach, and then there's Pijul pushing the boundaries with all that math stuff.
It's been pretty eye-opening, right? I mean, who knew there was so much out there beyond just Git?
Right. So as we wrap things up here, what would you say is the biggest takeaway for our listeners? What's the one thing you hope they remember?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is just realizing that there's no one right way to do version control, What works for one team or project might not be the best fit for another. It's like, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah, totally. Kind of like choosing the right programming language or something. You use the best tool for the job.
Exactly. And, sometimes it's easy to get stuck in our ways, especially when we're comfortable with a certain tool.
Oh, totally. I'm guilty of that for sure.
But it never hurts to be open-minded,
Yeah,
Explore your options, see what else is out there.
absolutely. So for anyone listening who's feeling adventurous or maybe just a little frustrated with their current setup, I think it's worth checking out Fossil and Pijul. Even if you don't switch, you might learn something new.
For sure. You might even discover a feature you never knew you needed, or a totally different way of thinking about version control.
Right. Knowledge is power. And hey, who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be inspired to create the next big thing in version control.
That would be amazing.
I know, right? So to everyone listening, keep experimenting, keep learning, and of course, happy coding.